The next round of active weather starts for mid portions of this week as a significant trough moves across portions of the northern U.S. And then we turn our attention to a stronger series of troughs moving into parts of the southern plains, bringing chances for heavy precipitation and potential severe weather for portions of Texas as we look at the weather forecast for middle portions of the atmosphere at 500 millibars, which is around 4 miles above the surface. We like to look at vorticity, or the spin in the atmosphere there. It helps us diagnose where storm systems are, where troughs and ridges are, and what potential hazards and intensities might be. We can see right now, as of Monday, we see pretty broad troughing across parts of the Northeast. This is where we're seeing cooler temperatures and some light snow for portions of the Great Lakes and Northeast. We have this very split flow pattern. Polar jet extended across parts of North America and beyond, and north of the U.S., and then the subtropical jet is across parts of the southern U.S. And within this, a few very weak troughs, one across the Gulf Coast states, bringing some rainfall to parts of Florida, and then another coming into the Southwest. It'll bring some chances for rain into the Four Corners regions, south portions of the Four Corners regions today and into tomorrow before more significant trough enters into the Southwest later this week. As we evolve through the next 24 to 48 hours, we see first storm system moves into and off of Florida. Second storm system moves across the south. A more significant part of the northern jet stream brings a trough into parts of Montana. This is going to bring some wintry precipitation, but also very strong winds. This is going to have a pretty compact area of strong low-level wind that's going to create likely some downsloping conditions for parts of the northern Rockies on the eastward, leeward side of the mountains there. We've already seen some significant downslope wind events for a lot of the areas on the lee of the Rockies and parts of Montana. It looks like another setup for Tuesday. And as we go beyond that, we'll see this trough kind of lived up to the north. That's going to help temperatures not remain cool. Things should be moderating in terms of cold temperatures across the Great Lakes and Northeast as we head through the week. And then our attention turns to a trough coming into the Southwest later this week and into this weekend. It looks like it's going to be in the form of a few individual shortwave troughs. So that's going to set up sort of multiple rounds of potential heavy rain and severe weather. And there is some uncertainty with this, but the one thing I wanted to call out too, this South Stream split flow is going to help bring some precipitation to areas that are going to need it. It's not going to necessarily bring a meaningful impact or improvement of drought conditions, but we do see the current drought monitor has a lot of areas of the U.S., outside of portions of north central and parts of California. We're seeing a lot of areas in the D2, D3, D4 drought designations, so severe drought or worse. And that's been made worse really over the last month for a lot of the southeast and southwest where we see sort of these tan and brown colors. We've seen precipitation that is below average for the last 30 days, but it has been a little bit more active for parts of the Great Lakes and Midwest and parts of the interior Northwest especially. So as we see this split flow pattern bringing some of these troughs, we will see some improvement, some rainfall. Again, not much improvement to drought, but some rainfall for parts of the south that needed across parts of Florida, parts of the Southwest as well. There is some uncertainty too, as we really focus in on the storm system or series of troughs for this weekend. There's a few ways we can look at this as meteorologists. So one is to look at what we call DPROG DT. How has the forecast been changing for specific forecast fields for specific times? So if we look at Sunday evening, which would be 0Z Monday, we can see that this morning's GFS run, 12Z run, has these two individual shortwave troughs within this. As we look at the past recent runs, we see that it has had some differences as expected. It has had a little bit more consistency of phasing with a trough across parts of the polar jet stream. So a little bit more deeper, broader connected trough. It seems like it's trying to sort of keep that a little bit more separate now, really focusing on the subtropical jet stream, and that might mean perhaps slightly better configuration. Split flow patterns like this tend to do pretty well in terms of heavy precipitation, and severe weather chances tend to be a little bit more higher with these split flow patterns like this. So GFS is leaning into that. Another way we can look at these models too, I'm just sort of sharing like how we as meteorologists think about looking at these forecasts. You can look also at just for the same time, what do different forecasts show? Pivotal Weather does a really great job of showing a lot of the base weather models. And some of the AI-based ones as well. So we can see the AI-based GraphCast GFS. We compare that to the GFS. We see that Um, it is a little bit more smoothed out, but it does have still this individual leading shortwave trough, and then the deeper one further west, with the north part of the polar jet stream further north. So it's kind of showing the split flow as well in the AI based GFS model. A little bit more phase in the Canadian model. The European seems to be a little bit deeper. It seems like not necessarily phased. It seems like it's still keeping a north part polar jet trough up further north. So there is just overall some differences within this. We can also look at all the ensembles from the Canadian GFS and European and see where differences are. And we do see that overall, on average, things have this trough coming in as we look into Friday evening, so a couple days prior, this trough coming into near California. We do see some differences where we see the blues is where there are different clusters of ensemble forecasts showing the trough coming in a little bit faster, a little bit sooner. And then we see on this northwest side, this is suggesting a little bit more phasing with the polar jet stream trough as well. So there is some differences, some within this, both in terms of timing and then sort of the overall amplitude. I think overall, regardless of how this sets up, the best chances for heavier rain and severe weather are going to be in the South Plains. So I think that's some consistency, and we see that represented by the Storm Prediction Center. We'll talk about fire weather concerns in a bit, but for severe weather, we're looking at a outline for days 6 and 7, really for the same areas. So Saturday and Sunday, we're going to see chances for severe weather across much of western Texas, both days, and with those multiple rounds of severe weather. And as those areas of initial severe weather move off to the east, we could see some heavier precipitation in and around the South Plains. Also wanted to call out too some fire weather concerns considering continuing as we've seen much of the spring across today parts of the South Plains and leeward of the southern Rockies. Um, and then that extends into parts of the southeast tomorrow. And wanted to call out too, given the very dry conditions we have had, we have seen the National Interagency Fire Center does these 7-day fire weather outlooks. But I wanted to call out too, they just updated the outlook for the next few months. We see that for April, areas of red suggest where NIFC says is seeing because of fuel and drought conditions where there are above average chances for large and costly wildfires. It's really highlighting a lot of the areas that we've seen a lot of fire weather risk already, enhanced fire weather risk across parts of the southeast and then parts of the southern plains into the lee of the southern Rockies. So not surprising there that is more of the same where we have more fuel loading and very dry conditions. As we head into May, we see kind of continue, but we begin to see this already expanding into parts of the Southwest or parts of northern interior California. And as we head into June, a pretty big expansion, really expecting, what looks to be an early ramp up in the fire season, even for parts of the Northwest or interior portions. Southwest looking to see above average chances for large and costly wildfires. Again, this is just really owing to a lot of the really poor snowpack that we've seen, especially for the Southwest. A lot of that's already melting off way ahead of schedule. So less moisture from snowpack to go into the ground. So a lot of your heavier fuels, your timber and things like that are likely to be in pretty rough conditions as we head into early this summer. Of course, this could change if we have a very active, wet late spring. This could offset this. So fingers crossed that happens, but just given the trend of where things are at, it is looking more likely that we'll see above average large costly wildfires for portions or much of portions of the western U.S. Didn't talk much about temperatures, but what we are seeing in general, as I mentioned before, cooler temperatures in the next few days across parts of the Northeast. That kind of moderates as we go through the next few days in a lot of areas, especially out west, and then eventually into central and eastern U.S. Later this week, into this weekend, we'll see temperatures above average. Things will be a little bit cooler as this trough comes into the southwest for this weekend.